All right, I got us some rather epic stuff to do today. Now, my original plan was to introduce the new assignment for today, but I actually kind of want to change it up a little bit. Um, the next assignment for us, we've been inside our heads. We've talked about oppression, we've talked about the things that frustrate us the most. But now it's time for us to take a step outside of our own minds and start to engage with the wider world. And this is extremely good for writing because when we write trapped in our own brains, we kind of spin our wheels a little bit. We end up just sort of obsessing over things. Our language becomes very abstract, and that can actually make your writing very unclear and just not fun to write, really. So let's take a breath of fresh air and start looking at the actual physical reality of the world. Now, the point of this next assignment is to go for physical description. We want to try to bring things to life. Now, when I'm in the face-to-face classroom, I love to go through all sorts of weird definition problems. I like to kind of play around with definitions and try to get students to define things. And one of the words that always comes up as being like a real nightmare for people to define is description. For most people, it's like, what does description mean? Well, it means describing something. Well, you can't really do that if you're trying to ascertain the real meaning of a word. That's what we call a tautology. It's self-referential. It makes no sense. To get to the real essence of the word, you have to avoid using it. So for my definition of description, what I use is sensory details. Sensory details that appeal to the five senses, which include touch, sound, sight, taste, and smell. So touch, sound, sight, taste, smell. Those are the type of things we're trying to appeal to when we describe something. We're trying to bring it to life by making people experience what we're writing, right? We try to bring them into the world of the thing that we are writing. Now, rather than focus just upon this abstract description, though, let's actually tie this in with kind of a weird grammar issue, because abstract writing in your head, is much harder to punctuate than physical, concrete details that exist in the world. So I usually go on this long tirade where I'm doing all the parts of speech, and we define all those bits of language that you've not talked about since elementary school. Now, I'm not going to do that because I don't want you guys sitting in front of your computer all day getting an abstract lesson in the history of grammar. I can get away with that crap in a classroom because I can joke about it and I can carry on and I can do all sorts of stupid stuff where I'm like, oh my goodness, that's such a crazy, But it's really hard to drag that out when you're filming a YouTube video for someone to sit and watch in the lonely cold of their house. What is up with this weather? What is up? What is up with this weather? My God, it's so cold out there. I'm like, I want to live up north, but I'm in South Georgia. Like, I shouldn't have to be dealing with this. Oh, and by the way, PlayStation 5 was available at Target this morning, 2 minutes. I swear, 2 minutes it was available and it was sold out. I held off because I want an Xbox. But that's how insanely difficult it is to get one of these systems right now. And I'm like, I don't think I'm going to get one of these for like a year. Anyway, let's focus on the task at hand. Think of verbs. Verbs are one of the things that I really like to focus on when we move to this next assignment. If you were to make a list of verbs in your head right now, just raw verbs, you would probably be able to do so with minimal effort. I mean, verbs include things like run, jump, leap, shoot, borrow, steal, create, tear down, destroy, discombobulate, disembowel. I'm getting into the horror verbs, right? Kill, love, maim. The point here is so far, you guys probably can, sweet. I got a notification. That never happens. You guys probably can tell that if I really wanted to, I could just keep going and going and going with this. There is a near infinite amount of verbs out there. And because verbs are tied to our actions, they are words that are tied to the things that we do in the world. And there's actually a lot of different actions that are available to you, right? That's probably one of the most important elements of creativity, is just expanding on the verbs that you use. But When I do this long conversation in my class about verbs, and yes, I do a long conversation in class about verbs, we can list and list and list and list and list. And typically, the students do not say the most common verb in the English language. It goes right over their head. It's kind of one of those really weird, interesting bits of irony in the English language that the most common verb does not feel like a verb to us. It feels too abstract. It feels too mental. And that verb is, of course, it's so important, I'm going to write it out. I'm writing it in big letters. That verb is, of course, be. It looks backwards on my screen. That's funny. Be. Be is a verb that is very useful in the sense that it can be put in almost any connotation. It is a word that we use without thinking. If you're gonna do the public speaking thing where you're like, be is kind of a filler when your brain is having some mental static. You can always go to a conversation about the nature of things, and you can get writing down on the page. The problem is most students rely far too much on these types of words. Now, I'm going to actually type this up, and I'm going to leave this underneath the video as we get into the actual mini assignment for today. But these words include, I'm going to write them out real big, is, are, was, were, been, being, am, and of course to be. I don't think I'm missing one. Is, are, was, were, been, being, am, and be. There they are. And like I said, don't worry about writing all this down. I'll actually type this out. These are what we call passive verbs. Passive verbs are verbs that show no action. They are self-contradictory. One of my favorite phrases right now, favorite words, oxymoronic. It is a verb that shows no action and is instead reflexive. It thinks about the nature of what it is to be without, having any action at all. And there's a lot of reasons that these words are problematic. There are some languages in the world that don't really focus and have any much emphasis on the way things are. Some languages are much more concerned about the way things will be in the future and actually look more towards like becoming as opposed to what things are, right? And in actuality, that actually kind of affects your behavior. I know I'm getting off the beaten path here, but I'm the teacher, so I can do that. Shut up. People who live in those types of cultures where be is not such a focus of thought, where it's not, as readily available as it is in English, people in those societies are a lot better at saving their money as opposed to spending it all the time. It's actually really, really fascinating how those little bits of language can greatly influence our behavior. But we're dealing with English, and English is very, very focused on the moment. This has a lot to do with philosophy. English is extremely philosophical in a way that a lot of other languages look at it and it's like, dude, you need to calm down, right? There's whole books, and this is French, not English, but there's whole books that have like meditations on being in that like passive sense. So in any case, that's way too far off the beaten path. Let's bring it back. As interesting as these words are in our language, they don't actually do much. They take up a lot of space. And believe it or not, these words suck a lot of oxygen out of the room where other verbs can exist and be vivid and descriptive. And the other problem with these, and this is the thing I like to really reiterate to my students, I found in the past that passive verbs complicate your grammar. Abstract concepts like being, the nature of things, which is what we're constantly dealing with when we're using a lot of those words, can turn really difficult to punctuate. And sentences can become very reflexive. They return back on themselves. I've had students in the past who have absolutely struggled with grammatical problems. And it's like really hard to tie down exactly what's bugging them. Like a lot of English teachers end up chasing a lot of different grammatical rules. And they end up really obsessing over things like comma problems and capitalization and sentence fragments. Cutting down on these words has a way of simplifying your sentence structure, making it concrete, and instantly makes your sentences easier to deal with. I used to see this a lot when I taught at Armstrong, and I was one of the writing tutors there. I had students who absolutely struggled with grammatical stuff. Students who, and if you struggle with this, please don't take this as derogatory, because it's not. Like these types of students are the ones that I care about the most. Students that I can't even tell what they're trying to say, right? That exists. And it's like, at that point as an instructor, it's like, no, I don't want to fail you. I want to help you. But when a student is actually having trouble telling me what they want to say, and I'm having trouble understanding them, yikes, we got work to do, right? The first thing that I do in that situation is not to go in and give them a grammar lesson. The first thing that I do is actually get them to cut down on those words. You got to find a way to write actively. If you write actively, your sentences will be easier to control. And this is a very strange way of trying to advocate for more concise sentences, but it works. I've seen students improve the quality of their writing drastically by focusing on using more active verbs as opposed to passive ones. I promise you, it will immediately change the tenor of your writing. And for those of you who are freaking out, let me give you some parameters here. A good proper paragraph in a formal paper, like if you're submitting something to me, the absolute best that you can do is a 10-sentence paragraph. 5-sentence paragraphs, which most students seem to think is the norm, that's not very good. You're going to end up with paragraphs that just don't really do very much. They're not working hard enough, and you're going to end up having to like kind of sort of wander around in your topic a bit. You really want 10. In a 10-sentence paragraph, if you go over 3 passive verbs, you're going to have problems. That's the way I view it. And that's what I try to think about when I'm writing my own stuff, right? It's not that you have to completely eradicate them. If you completely eradicate passive verbs, you're going to end up sounding like some kind of alien. It's not that they're bad in and of their own right. It's when they're abused. It's when there's too much passive verb that the language starts to get muddled. We need to just kind of pare these things down. Another alert. Oh my goodness. Popular this morning. So anyway, how do we exercise this, and how do we try this on for size? Again, I go on with a lot of theory and I pile on a lot of fun, stupid teacher crap to try to make this interesting. But for you guys, I'm going to try to go straight for the throat. My favorite way of doing this is to watch music videos. We're going to watch some music videos. I have a list of them ready to go. And you're going to pretend to be a music reviewer for a magazine. Like, what are some magazines that do this? I think Entertainment Weekly does this. I think Rolling Stone does this. Rolling Stone was my personal favorite for a long time. But reviewers try to ascertain in the most simple way, if you really want to look at what a review is supposed to do, it's trying to tell you what the quality of the work is. Sometimes they have a sliding scale. Sometimes they come right out and give it a thumbs up, thumbs down. Just kind of depends on the reviewer, right? But in this case, you guys are going to be writing up a response to a music video. And I'm going to give you a list to choose from. These are the worst music videos I've ever seen in my entire life. They're very, very bad. They're bad enough that sometimes students report that they feel as if they've been physically attacked watching them. I love it. I absolutely love bad music videos. Why do I do this? I do this because I find it to be a lot more fun to attack something than it is to praise it. So I'm trying to find something that's just so conducive to hatred that you can immediately just rail against it. That's my personal philosophy. So I want you guys to pretend that you're reviewing a music video. You're going to tell me whether or not I should be interested in it. You're going to tell me how it made you feel. I'm going to give you a little bit of an example of this too in a minute, but I will give you a list of these music videos online, and then you will write on, I'm going to say, let's go for 10 sentences. Let's stretch. Let's get crazy. Let's go for a 10-sentence review. And you're going to post it in the assignment 2 discussion forum. This is the very first thing we're going to do for assignment 2. And we're going to really ramp this thing up. But I know what you guys are going to think. Normally, I do this with a group project mentality so that students can kind of sort of share the workload on this, because this can be extremely painful to do the first time. Not even because the music videos are so bad, but because pulling passive verbs out of your writing is going to be a little bit like pulling teeth. It's going to be hard. Now, I don't want you guys to beat yourself up if you end up using a few accidentally. In fact, the second part of this is going to be going back and trying to find examples in other people's posts, which will be worth a lot of points, right? And trying to fix them for each other. What I might do on Thursday is go back, pull a few examples, and fix them on camera, right? And this is not to say, you did it wrong. It's going to be like, hey, what are some possible ways we could fix these examples, right? I like to work with student writing. I don't want to fix sample writing from a textbook somewhere. I want to work with yours. I want to show you how you could do it. So that's the overall goal here. Everybody go and write a 10-sentence paragraph responding to one of the 3 music videos I will post beneath this YouTube video. Now, a lot of people, when they're given this task, will sort of sit back and say, it's impossible. It can't be done. It can. It's hard. It's difficult, right? But being your teacher, I owe it to you to show you that it can be done. Now, I've done this so many times that it gets a little cliche, but I love reviewing Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift's a pretty cool artist. I'm sorry, she's okay. I personally can't stand her. That's just the way that I am. I personally think that her songs are a little sneezy for my taste. I like to imagine that she's in a recording studio somewhere and she's singing a song and just the glass is covered with boogers after she's done. She's just nasally, right? We all know that. So, but I will say this: her music career has matured, and she's definitely a lot. She's done very well for herself. So I don't think Taylor Swift is anywhere, and I don't think she's sitting in a corner rocking back and forth crying because of some bodunk English instructor said not nice things to her on the internet. I think she can take a review from a lowly little lamprey like me, right? Riding on the tummy of a shark. It's really weird. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to review the one song by Taylor Swift that I hate the most, that is forever stuck in my brain after it played while I was having a root canal some years ago. True story. And the pain of the root canal didn't bother me as much as the song did. I hate the song, and that song is Shake It Off. I despise that song, right? It just, ugh. Anyway, I'm going to do a quick sample review of Shake It Off. I'm doing this completely off the top of my head, and I'm going to try to avoid using the words that I've given you, and that is be, is, are, was, were, been, being, am. Again, I'm trying to think if there's any that I left off. I'll have to double check it. It's funny. I don't have this stuff completely stored in my brain as well as some other people do. So it's very possible I might make a mistake right now, but just try to catch me, right? See if I use one. Taylor Swift violates all norms of good music with her song Shake It Off. I imagine most members of the human race would rather listen to cats attacking infants. I hope and I pray that all the albums containing Shake It Off hitch a ride aboard a rocket to the sun, where they will explode with grandeur and fury to rain down upon the earth once again in fireballs of vengeance. Taylor Swift commits crimes so egregious against the ears of humans, and I believe a legal case should be brought against her in the world court. I did too. I'm not perfect either. That being said, that was pretty good, wasn't it? That was pretty good for just coming up with it off the top of my head. It is possible. And also keep in mind, that sounded kind of ridiculous, didn't it? It was ridiculous, but it was vivid. It was description. It wasn't just, I don't like Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift is stupid. Her song is bad. That's not what that did. That did something that had a lot of thought put into it. It had, descriptive verbs. Those verbs really motivate a lot of the power of your writing. Now, why am I able to do that? I'm not a student. I'm a writer. I write all the time. I've got this writing muscle that's developed, and I write stuff right now. I write and I publish. It's part of my my brain right now. A lot of you guys don't have that. A lot of you guys haven't written in a very, very long time. So that's not going to be natural for you, but that's okay. A classroom is not a place for people to do things that are natural to them. A classroom is a place where we put on new behaviors and we try them out and we see how we do with it, right? So I want you guys to try this out. I want you to see what happens. We'll write these reviews. Next time, I'll pluck a few out and we'll fix them in my next video lecture. We'll get more specifics on what I want for the larger assignment next week. Right now, I really just want to play with these passive verbs. This is one of the things I'm going to start looking for in your papers. If you start overusing passive verbs, it's going to start counting off on your grade. So keep that in mind. Another notification. Man, I am just on fire today. Anyway, you guys have a great day. Enjoy the assignment.